On Christmas Eve, Carter Wells stood in a glittering toy store, counting crumpled bills with shaking fingers. His 6-year-old daughter Audrey had fallen in love with a small wind-up ballerina, simple, delicate, and painfully within the limits of his tight budget. Nearby, celebrity CEO Vivian Constance browsed luxury collectibles, overheard the cashier praising Carter's effort, and scoffed loudly. "That's not a gift. That's an apology wrapped in plastic," she mocked, drawing stares. Carter bought it anyway. Hours later, Audrey opened the box, gasped like she'd received a miracle, and hugged him fiercely. Vivian arrived for a charity photo op and witnessed Audrey's joy wipe her smile away. But this story doesn't begin in that toy store. It begins 3 days earlier, on a cold December evening, when Carter Wells walked through the front doors of the Millbrook Community Center with snow still melting on his worn work boots. He had just finished a 12-hour shift at the Hartwell building downtown, where he worked as a maintenance technician. His hands were rough from fixing radiators and unclogging pipes, and his back ached from crawling through tight spaces most people would never see. But none of that mattered the moment he spotted Audrey sitting cross-legged on the carpet, surrounded by other children from the after-school program. She looked up and saw him. Her whole face changed. She scrambled to her feet and ran toward him with her arms wide open, her brown ponytail bouncing behind her. "Daddy!" Carter caught her in mid-leap and held her close, breathing in the faint scent of crayons and apple juice that always seemed to cling to her clothes. "Hey, sweetheart, how was your day?" "We made snowflakes out of paper," she said, holding up a crooked white creation. "Mine has 7 points instead of 6, but Miss Eleanor said that makes it special." Carter smiled and tucked the snowflake carefully into his jacket pocket. "Then we'll hang it on our tree tonight." On the walk home, Audrey chattered about the other kids and their Christmas wish lists. One boy wanted a remote-control helicopter. Another girl wanted a tablet with games. The lists grew longer and more elaborate with every block they passed, and Carter listened quietly, his heart growing heavier with each item. When they reached their small apartment on the 3rd floor of an aging brick building, Audrey ran to the window and pressed her nose against the cold glass. "Daddy, do you think Santa knows where we live now?" Carter knelt beside her. "Of course he does. Sweetheart, Santa always knows." She turned to face him, her brown eyes wide and serious. "Emily said Santa brings bigger presents to kids who live in bigger houses. Is that true?" Carter felt something twist in his chest. He reached out and smoothed a strand of hair behind her ear. "Santa doesn't measure love by the size of a house," he said gently. "He measures it by what's in your heart, and you, Audrey Wells, have the biggest heart I know." She smiled then, a smile so pure and trusting that it almost broke him. That night, after Audrey had fallen asleep clutching her threadbare stuffed rabbit, Carter sat alone at the kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of bills. The numbers didn't lie. After rent, utilities, and groceries, he had $43 left until his next paycheck. $43 to make Christmas magic happen for a little girl who had already lost so much. Carter closed his eyes and rubbed his temples. His wife, Megan, had passed away 4 years ago after a sudden illness that had drained their savings and left him drowning in medical debt. He had clawed his way back, one repair job at a time, but the holidays always reminded him of how far they had fallen. He refused to let Audrey see that struggle. He refused to let her know that sometimes he skipped meals so she could have seconds. He refused to let her childhood be defined by what they lacked. The next morning, Carter picked up an extra shift at the Hartwell building, then signed on for evening work at a warehouse near the edge of town. The holiday season meant packages needed moving, and he needed every dollar he could earn. For 3 days, He worked from dawn until nearly midnight. He fixed broken heaters for elderly tenants who pressed cookies into his hands as thanks. He hauled boxes through the cold warehouse until his arms burned. He came home to find Audrey already asleep, and he kissed her forehead before collapsing into his own bed. On December 23rd, Carter walked past a toy store on his way to pick up Audrey. The window display sparkled with lights and motion, a wonderland of color and sound. He almost kept walking, but then he saw Audrey standing at the edge of the display, her breath fogging the glass. He had no idea how she had gotten there. She was supposed to be at the community center until 5, but there she stood, transfixed by something in the corner of the window. Audrey. She turned, startled, then smiled when she saw him. Daddy. Miss Eleanor let us out early. Mrs. Patterson walked me this far because she was going to the pharmacy. Carter looked toward the pharmacy 2 doors down and saw the elderly woman waving. He waved back, grateful. What are you looking at, sweetheart? Audrey pointed. In the midst of elaborate play sets and gleaming electronics sat a small music box with a wind-up ballerina inside. The figure was simple, a pale pink dress, a tiny crown, delicate arms curved overhead. When the mechanism turned, she would spin slowly on a mirrored platform while a soft melody played. Isn't she beautiful? Audrey whispered. She looks like Mama. Carter's throat tightened. Megan had been a dancer before they married. Not professional, just community theater and the occasional recital, but she had moved with a grace that had captivated him from the moment they met. Audrey had been too young to remember her mother dancing, but somehow, looking at that simple wind-up ballerina, she had made the connection. She does, Carter said softly. She really does. Audrey didn't ask for the ballerina. She didn't beg or plead or add it to a list. She simply looked at it for a long moment, then took her father's hand and said, We should go home. Daddy, it's cold. But Carter saw the way her eyes lingered on that window as they walked away. He memorized the longing in her expression, the way she glanced back one last time before the store disappeared from view. That night, after she was asleep. He counted his money again. The wind-up ballerina cost $31. It would leave him with barely enough for groceries until payday. No margin for error. No safety net. He thought about Megan. He thought about all the Christmases they had planned together, all the traditions they had wanted to build. He thought about Audrey's face when she said the ballerina looked like her mother. The decision made itself. On Christmas Eve, Carter walked into the toy store with crumpled bills in his pocket and hope in his heart. The store was chaos. Last-minute shoppers pushed past each other, grabbing items from shelves with frantic energy. Children squealed and pointed while exhausted parents tried to maintain order. Holiday music blared from hidden speakers, and the air smelled of cinnamon and plastic. Carter made his way to the corner where the wind-up ballerina sat. His heart sank when he saw the nearly empty shelf. Only 2 remained. He picked one up carefully, cradling it like something precious. The ballerina was even more beautiful up close. Hand-painted details adorned her tiny dress. Her face bore a serene expression, eyes closed as if lost in the music only she could hear. Carter noticed a small imperfection, a barely visible scratch on the mirrored base. So faint, most people would never see it. He didn't care. This was the one. He joined the checkout line and waited. The box held against his chest, around him. Shopping carts overflowed with expensive electronics and designer toys. He saw price tags that made his head spin, hundreds of dollars for items that would probably be forgotten by February. Near the front of the store, a commotion drew his attention. A sleek black car had pulled up outside, and a woman emerged, surrounded by assistants and cameras. She moved through the entrance like she owned the place, which, judging by the way the staff scrambled to accommodate her, she very well might. Vivian Constance. Carter recognized her from magazine covers and business news segments. She was the CEO of Constance Media Group, a powerhouse in entertainment and advertising. Her face was everywhere during the holiday season, attached to charity campaigns and feel-good stories designed to burnish her company's image. In person, she was striking sharp features, immaculate clothing, an air of absolute confidence. She walked through the store pointing at items while a young woman with a tablet took notes, and a man in an expensive suit spoke rapidly into his phone. "That entire display," Vivian said, gesturing toward a wall of premium toys. "And those collector's editions, make sure they're wrapped properly this time. The presentation matters." Carter turned back to the line, trying to ignore the spectacle. He was only 3 customers from the register now. When he finally reached the counter, the young cashier smiled at him warmly. "Oh, the wind-up ballerina. These are beautiful. Is this for your daughter?" Carter nodded, carefully counting out his bills. She fell in love with it, said it reminds her of her mother. The cashier's expression softened. "That's so sweet. She's going to treasure this forever." "I hope so." He slid the money across the counter, exactly $31 in crumpled 1s and 5s. The cashier counted it, nodded, and began wrapping the box in tissue paper. That was when Vivian Constance appeared beside him. She had been browsing the nearby display of luxury collectibles when she overheard the exchange. Now she stood with her arms crossed, looking at Carter's modest purchase with an expression somewhere between amusement and disdain. "That's what you're giving her for Christmas?" she asked, loud enough for nearby shoppers to hear. "A $30 wind-up toy." Carter turned to face her, keeping his expression neutral. "Yes." Vivian laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "That's not a gift. That's an apology wrapped in plastic. If you can't afford to give a child a proper Christmas, perhaps you should reconsider your priorities." The store went quiet around them. Shoppers stopped and stared. The cashier's hands froze over the tissue paper. Carter felt the heat rise in his neck, but he kept his voice steady. "A proper Christmas isn't about price tags." "Easy to say when you can't afford the price tags." Vivian glanced at her assistant, Gwen, who looked deeply uncomfortable. "Some people shouldn't have children if they can't provide for them." A woman nearby gasped. A man started to step forward, his face flushed with anger on Carter's behalf, but Carter held up a hand, stopping him. "It's okay," he said quietly. He turned to Vivian one last time. "I hope your Christmas brings you whatever it is you're missing." Then he took the wrapped package from the stunned cashier, thanked her, and walked out into the cold December night. He didn't see the young man near the entrance, phone held discreetly at his side, recording everything. The walk home was long and cold. Snow had begun to fall, dusting the city in white. Christmas lights twinkled from windows and rooftops, and the sound of carols drifted from open doorways. Carter clutched the small package against his chest, protecting it from the weather. His hands still trembled not from the cold, but from the effort of staying calm in that store. He thought about what Vivian had said. The words echoed in his mind, sharp and poisonous, for a moment. He let himself wonder if she was right, if Audrey deserved a father who could give her more, if love alone was enough. Then he thought about Audrey's face when she saw that ballerina, the way she had said, "She looks like Mama." No, love was more than enough. Love was everything. When he got home, Audrey was waiting by the window, watching the snow fall. "Daddy, it's snowing, a real white Christmas." He swept her into his arms and held her tight, breathing in her warmth, letting her joy chase away the cold that had settled in his heart. "Let's make hot chocolate," he said, "and then we can finish decorating the tree." They spent the evening together, stringing popcorn and hanging ornaments. Carter had found most of them at thrift stores over the years, mismatched and worn, but each one had a story. Audrey knew them all. "This one was Grandma's," she said, holding up a glass icicle. "And this one you and Mama bought on your first Christmas together. You remember that. You tell me every year." She smiled. "I like hearing it." After she went to bed, Carter sat by the tree and carefully wrapped the wind-up ballerina. He used paper from a sale bin, slightly crinkled, a pattern of silver stars on deep blue, and taped it with more precision than he had ever applied to any repair job. He noticed the small scratch on the mirrored base again. An idea struck him. From his toolbox, he retrieved a tube of epoxy and a tiny glass bead, a leftover from a broken chandelier he had repaired months ago. Working carefully, he fixed the bead to the base, covering the scratch perfectly. When the glue dried, it looked like a deliberate decoration, a diamond at the ballerina's feet. He placed the gift under the tree and sat back, exhausted but satisfied. Audrey woke at dawn, unable to contain her excitement. She came running out of her room in her pajamas, bare feet slapping against the cold floor. "Daddy, Daddy, wake up, it's Christmas." Carter was already awake, sitting by the tree with a cup of coffee. He smiled and patted the spot beside him. "Come see what Santa brought." There was only one package under the tree, small, wrapped in silver stars. Audrey picked it up carefully, feeling its weight. "Can I open it?" "Of course, sweetheart." She tore the paper with eager fingers, revealing the box beneath. When she lifted the lid and saw the wind-up ballerina, her whole body went still. "Daddy," she whispered. "It's her, the one from the window." "Turn the key," Carter said softly. "See what happens." Audrey wound the mechanism with trembling fingers. The ballerina began to spin, slow and graceful, while a delicate melody filled the room. Audrey watched, transfixed, tears streaming down her cheeks. Then she threw herself into Carter's arms and held on like she would never let go. "I love it," she said against his shoulder. "I love it so much. Thank you. Daddy, thank you." Carter closed his eyes and held his daughter tight. This was Christmas. This moment. This feeling. This was everything. What he didn't know was that across town, in a gleaming penthouse overlooking the city, Vivian Constance was preparing for a very different kind of morning. The charity event was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon at the Millbrook Community Center, the same center where Audrey attended after-school programs. Constance Media had sponsored a holiday gift drive, and Vivian was expected to appear, smile for cameras, and hand out presents to underprivileged children. It was the kind of obligation she performed every year. Good publicity, strong optics, a reminder that wealthy corporations cared about those less fortunate. Vivian dressed carefully in a cream-colored coat and designer boots. Her assistant Gwen arrived with coffee and the day's itinerary. Leon Price, the company's PR director, called to confirm camera placements and talking points. "Remember," Leon said through the phone, "heartfelt but professional. We want warmth, not performative sentimentality." "I know how to smile, Leon." "Of course. Just reminding you that this event matters. Our Q4 charitable giving numbers need strong visual documentation." Vivian ended the call and stared at her reflection in the window. Beyond the glass, the city sparkled with snow and lights. Somewhere out there, families were unwrapping presents, sharing meals, making memories. She felt nothing. The community center was warm and bright when she arrived. Volunteers had strung lights everywhere, and tables groaned with donated food and toys. Children ran between the displays, laughing and shouting, their joy almost overwhelming. Vivian made her way to the main hall, where cameras had been set up to capture her distributing gifts. She shook hands with organizers, posed for photos, and delivered her prepared remarks about the importance of giving back. Then she noticed a small figure sitting on the floor near the back of the room. It was a little girl in a worn but clean dress, brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was showing something to the children gathered around her, a small music box with a wind-up ballerina inside. Vivian's stomach dropped. She recognized that ballerina. "And when you turn the key," the little girl was saying, "she dances. My daddy picked her just for me because she looks like my mama." The other children watched, enchanted. As the ballerina spun on her mirrored base, the little girl's face glowed with pride and love. Vivian couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. She remembered the toy store, the crumpled bills, the man with worn hands and quiet dignity who had looked at her and said, "I hope your Christmas brings you whatever it is you're missing." A volunteer passed by and noticed Vivian staring. "Isn't she precious? That little ballerina has been the hit of the party. The other kids have toys worth 10 times as much, but they all want to see hers." "Why?" The volunteer smiled. "Because she tells the best stories. She says her daddy fixed the scratch on the base with a magic diamond. The other kids believe her completely." Vivian looked closer and saw a tiny glass bead glinting on the mirrored platform, a repair so careful, so loving, that it had become part of the gift's beauty. Something cracked inside her for the rest of the event. She moved through her obligations like a ghost. She smiled when required, spoke when prompted, posed for every photo, but her eyes kept drifting back to that little girl and her $31 treasure. Leon noticed her distraction. "Everything all right? You seem off." "I'm fine." But she wasn't. She wasn't fine at all. That night, alone in her penthouse, Vivian sat surrounded by the gifts her team had purchased in her name. Expensive wines, designer accessories, artisanal chocolates wrapped in gold foil. All of it felt hollow. She thought about the wind-up ballerina, about the little girl who saw her mother in a simple toy, about the father who had scraped together every dollar he had to make his daughter's wish come true. And she thought about what she had said to him. The shame was overwhelming. It crashed over her in waves, leaving her breathless and sick. She had been cruel, not clever, not honest, not justified cruel. She had mocked a good man for loving his daughter. She had dismissed the most precious kind of giving as worthless. Gwen called the next morning with urgent news. "There's a video circulating from the toy store. Someone recorded the exchange between you and that man. It's everywhere." Vivian closed her eyes. "How bad?" The headline reads, "CEO mocks single father's Christmas gift." The comments are brutal. Leon is already drafting a response strategy. Within hours, Vivian was in a conference room with her legal team and PR department. The atmosphere was tense. Numbers and projections flashed on screens, stock prices, engagement metrics, sentiment analysis. "We can contain this," Leon said, pacing before a whiteboard covered in bullet points. "We find the man, offer him compensation, and issue a joint statement about reconciliation and holiday spirit." "You want to pay him off," Vivian said flatly. "I want to control the narrative. If he signs an agreement and appears alongside you expressing forgiveness, the story shifts from villain CEO to redemption arc." One of the board members nodded. "It's the smart play. Throw enough money at the problem and it goes away." Vivian thought about the little girl at the community center, the way she had held that ballerina like it was made of gold, the pride in her voice when she talked about her father. "Find out who he is," Vivian said. "But don't approach him yet. I want to know more first." The investigation didn't take long. Carter Wells, maintenance technician at the Hartwell building, widowed 4 years ago, single father to Audrey, age 6, no criminal record, no debt beyond normal living expenses, active volunteer at his daughter's community center, known for fixing broken appliances for elderly neighbors free of charge. Every detail made Vivian feel worse. This wasn't a man looking for a payout. This was a man who had built a life from broken pieces and held it together with love and determination. She had attacked him for being poor. She had implied he didn't deserve to be a father. And she had been completely, devastatingly wrong. Leon set up a meeting without Vivian's permission. He appeared at Carter's apartment with a briefcase full of documents and an offer of $50,000 in exchange for a signed statement and a photo opportunity. Carter listened politely. Then he declined. "I don't want your money," he said. "My daughter doesn't need your money. She needed you to be human." When Leon reported the failure, Vivian felt something unexpected respect. She went to see Carter herself. She found him outside the Hartwell building, finishing a repair on a tenant's wheelchair. Snow was falling again, and he worked with bare hands, focused entirely on the task. "Mr. Wells?" He looked up. His expression didn't change, no anger, no fear, no satisfaction, just quiet observation. "I came to apologize," Vivian said. "Not for cameras, not for a statement. I came because I was wrong." Carter set down his tools and stood. "Okay. I saw your daughter at the community center. I saw how she looked at that ballerina. I saw the repair you made to the base." Vivian's voice wavered. "I've never seen anyone love something that much. And I realized that what I said to you, what I implied about your ability to be a father, was the cruelest thing I've ever done." Carter was silent for a long moment. The snow fell around them, softening the edges of the world. "Why did you say it?" he asked finally. Vivian didn't have an easy answer. "Because I forgot what matters. Because somewhere along the way, I started believing that money was the only measure of value. Because I was empty inside and I didn't know how to fill it. That's honest. It's the truth." Carter picked up his tools. "I appreciate you coming here, but I'm not going to tell you it's okay. What you said hurt. It hurt me. And it could have hurt my daughter if she'd understood. I know. Forgiveness isn't something I can just hand over. It takes time." Vivian nodded. "I understand. But I want to do something. Not for publicity, something real. Something that might actually help." Carter studied her face for a long moment. Whatever he saw there seemed to satisfy him. "There's a room in the community center," he said. "It's supposed to be a repair workshop for kids, a place where volunteers fix old toys and teach children how things work. But it's been sitting empty for 2 years because no one could fund it." Vivian felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in years: purpose. "Let me fund it. Let me help build it." "No cameras," Carter said firmly. "No press releases, and I get to run it my way." "Agreed." That was the beginning. Over the following weeks, Vivian channeled resources into the holiday repair room with a fervor that surprised everyone who knew her. She didn't just write checks, she showed up. She learned to use basic tools. She sat with children as Carter taught them how to mend broken toys and give them new life. The board was not pleased. Several major shareholders demanded to know why she was wasting time on a tiny community project instead of maximizing Q4 profits. "This isn't strategic," one of them argued during an emergency meeting. "This is sentiment. Sentiment doesn't generate returns." Vivian stood her ground. "Maybe it's time we measured success differently." The battle cost her. 3 board members demanded her resignation. Stock prices fluctuated. Headlines questioned whether Constance Media had lost its edge. But something strange happened as the weeks passed. People noticed. Not the flashy PR campaign Leon had wanted, something quieter and more powerful. Volunteers shared stories about the repair room. Parents talked about how their children had stopped asking for expensive toys and started asking to learn how things worked. A local journalist investigated the story behind the viral video and discovered what Vivian had been doing since. Her article didn't paint Vivian as a hero. She was careful to include the original cruelty, but it showed something rare, genuine change. The tide began to turn. On New Year's Eve, the community center hosted a celebration for everyone who had been part of the repair room project. Tables were covered with toys that had been mended and restored dolls with new dresses, cars with working wheels, music boxes that played again. Carter stood at the front of the room with Audrey beside him. The little girl clutched her wind-up ballerina, which still held its place of honor on her nightstand at home. "I'm not good at speeches," Carter said, his voice carrying through the quiet room. "But I know what this place means. It means that a broken thing doesn't have to stay broken. It means that someone cares enough to try." He looked at Vivian, who stood near the back, trying not to draw attention to herself. "And it means that people can change, if they're willing to do the work." Vivian felt tears on her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. After the event, she found Audrey near the refreshment table, carefully turning the key on her ballerina. "Do you like the repair room?" Vivian asked. Audrey nodded. "Daddy helps everyone. He fixed Mrs. Patterson's toaster last week, and she gave him a whole pie." Vivian smiled. "He's good at fixing things." "The best." Audrey looked up at her with those wide, trusting eyes. "Do you like my ballerina Daddy picked her just for me?" Vivian knelt down to Audrey's level. "She's the most beautiful ballerina I've ever seen." Audrey beamed. "I named her Grace, because that's what Daddy says Mama had. Grace." Something broke loose in Vivian's chest. Not pain this time, but something softer. Something like hope. "That's a perfect name." Carter appeared beside them, and for a moment, the three of them stood together in the warm glow of the community center lights. "Thank you," Carter said quietly, "for keeping your word. Thank you for giving me the chance." She didn't stay much longer. This wasn't her celebration, it was theirs. But as she walked out into the cold night air, she carried something with her that all her money had never been able to buy, the knowledge that she had finally done something right. Spring came slowly to the city, melting the last stubborn patches of snow and coaxing green shoots from the frozen ground. The holiday repair room had become simply the repair room open year-round now, funded by a foundation Vivian had established but deliberately kept her name away from. Carter still worked maintenance at the Hartwell building, but his hours were better now, and his salary reflected his true skills. The building manager had finally recognized what tenants had known for years: Carter Wells was invaluable. Audrey started first grade in the fall. She brought her wind-up ballerina for show and tell and explained to her classmates that her daddy had fixed it with a magic diamond. The teacher called Carter that evening, laughing. "I've never seen kids so interested in repair work. Half of them went home asking their parents for tool kits." Vivian rebuilt her company from the inside out. It took time. Some board members left, some investors pulled out, but new ones came people who believed that profit and purpose didn't have to be enemies. She never forgot the lesson she learned in that toy store on Christmas Eve, the lesson a 6-year-old girl and her quiet, dignified father had taught her without saying a word. Love isn't measured by price tags. Value isn't determined by receipts. And the smallest gift, given with a whole heart, can change everything. On the first anniversary of that Christmas Eve, Vivian sent a package to the Wells apartment. No card, no return address, just a simple wooden box containing a brand new set of small tools sized for a child's hands. Audrey opened it with wonder in her eyes and immediately ran to show her father. "Daddy, look, now I can help you fix things." Carter smiled, understanding immediately where the gift had come from. He knelt beside his daughter and showed her how to hold a screwdriver properly, across town, in her office overlooking the city. Vivian watched the sunset paint the buildings gold and felt, for the first time in longer than she could remember, that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not at the top of an empire, not in front of cameras, but finally, at last, fully human, and on the nightstand, in a small apartment on the 3rd floor of an aging brick building. A wind-up ballerina continued her endless, graceful dance, a $31 miracle that had changed 3 lives forever. The music box played softly, filling the room with its delicate melody. And somewhere in the city, a little girl with her mother's eyes was learning that the most precious things in life don't come from stores. They come from love.